Take a deep breath. Today marks the 7th year that our next presenter has made a presentation here at Magic and Meaning. So this means that this will be his final appearance at the Magic and Mystery School, unless, of course, we manage to break another mirror. Over the years, we have watched him transform from an acerbic, curmudgeonly, somewhat unknown magician into an acerbic, curmudgeonly, somewhat well-known magician. Hey, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I could go on, but there is only so much verbiage one can fit on a 3x5 card, especially when using a 14-point font. So please put your hands together and welcome our final pep talk of the conference, the Prince of PowerPoint, Master Payne.
No, you're not going to need it for this one, because I'm afraid before I begin, I must first apologize for the less than stellar quality of this year's presentation. I fear it falls somewhat short of the mark when compared to my previous works. This is because it was all hastily cobbled together at the last minute, because I had not expected on attending this year's conference. Not that I don't love you guys. No, really. It's not that I don't love you guys. That would be weird. It's just that I didn't think I had the time. You see, in August, when I normally start putting these things together, I instead spent preparing for my appearance at the TAOM convention in Fort Worth, Texas. A couple people are really glad I did. September and October, I had originally planned on devoting to reworking all of my previous slideshows, as I will be presenting many of them less than a month from now at International Magic in London, England. So I just didn't think I could squeeze the Magic and Meaning conference between these two events and do it any kind of justice. However, a few weeks ago, I discovered that the faculty here at Mystery School can be most persuasive, especially when Jeff breaks out the scary ones. And after much discussion, they convinced me that it would be a very good thing if I attended this year's conference, especially if I ever wanted to see my cat again. By the way, guys, it's Mr. Twinkles, not Mr. Tinkles. Isn't he cute? I miss him so much. Fortunately, I already had an idea for a presentation kicking around the back of my head. It had been there ever since I performed at the last Magic Live. I had originally intended it on being a topic for one of my columns, but Stan pulled the plug on that outlet before I could write it, which in the end was a good thing, because after 16 months of writing columns, I had run out of pertinent things to say. Writing a monthly Magic column is very, very difficult. A lot more difficult than I had anticipated. I had had dreams of becoming the next Senator Crandall, but found myself rapidly becoming the magical equivalent of the grumpy old man who sits on the porch and yells at the kids to get off my lawn. So I guess I did reach my dream of being the next Senator Crandall. Nonetheless, getting back on subject, I have been doing these presentations for 7 years now. And during that time, I have acquired something of a reputation for doing them, so I've been asked to present them at other magic-themed events, chief among them the last 2 Magic Lives. Now, the curious thing that I have discovered that whenever I present one of these PowerPoints outside the confines of a Magic and Meaning conference, that the question that I most frequently ask, I'm sorry, yes, it's come to this. I have been reduced to using the clip art that comes with the program. That's one. How the mighty have fallen. Nonetheless, one of the questions that I most frequently ask when I present one of these is, do you have that whole thing memorized? To which I usually respond, no. I just have a random assortment of slides that I haphazardly flip through and make up crap about as they happen to come up. Fortunately for me, it always manages to work out. Yes, I'm a jerk. I eventually fess up and say, no, of course I have it memorized. I spend months, or in the case of this one, days, writing, refining, and memorizing the script. To which they then say, well, it doesn't sound memorized, to which I reply, that's why we call it acting. I mean, really, is it that hard for magicians to understand that I could memorize something like this? I mean, it's not exactly unheard of. I'm pretty sure nobody went up to Laurence Olivier after a play and said, wow, that was the greatest production of Hamlet I've ever seen. Did you have that whole thing memorized? If they did, I hope he said, no. I read it off a script stapled to the back of Petruchio. No mean feat, because he's in a completely different play. Now, in the last Magic Live, not only did I get to present one of my PowerPoints, I also was allowed to do one of my signature routines, the coin, the world's most expensive coin in bottle trick. Now, curiously, even though I received just as many, if not more, compliments for that routine as I did the PowerPoint, many coming from people you might actually recognize or have seen on TV, not a single one of them asked, did you have that whole thing memorized? Now, the presentation is about 12 minutes, runs about 1,900 words. The PowerPoint is about 20 minutes, it runs about 2,500 words. So the difference between the verbiage of the two pieces isn't all that great. In fact, it's about the number of words I've spoken so far. So why the question about one routine and not the other? I think it's point of reference. Very few people have magic-themed PowerPoint presentations. Which is why I get to go to England next month, and you don't. However, many people have magic routines of one form or another. So I think they try to apply their approach to magic to my PowerPoint presentations, which suggests to me that there's an awful lot of people out there who aren't scripting their shows. Not that any of you guys here are guilty of this most heinous crime, but since I'm now doing these presentations with an eye of taking them on the road, you're all going to have to pretend that you're at a regular old magic convention. Don't worry, I've brought disguises. So no one will know that you're actually in mystery school, nor we're at the premiere of the 2014 Magic and Meaning Pep Talks. Not thanks for the memories. I'm sorry, guys. This is most of it. It's thanks for the memorize. I told you this wasn't up to snuff. In which we will discuss the topic of scripting one's show. Scripts are very important. They are the roadmap to your show. It gets you from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. However, as useful as they are, magicians, many magicians, will eschew their use. They do so for many reasons. Some think it's just too complicated. Others just think it's not for me. Others think it makes them sound too stilted. They feel they had a script that this would hobble their performances and keep them from doing that spontaneous stream of consciousness, interactive performances that they're going for. You know, the ones like Robin Williams used to give. I will address each of these topics individually. First, I really hate to be the one to break it to you, but you're not Robin Williams. And all those spontaneous, extemporaneous bits of business that he did, I'm sorry to say, were scripted. I'm pretty sure the cue cards you could see him reading off of just didn't say, "Be funny." Now, I know, during interviews and stuff, he would go off on these wild tangents, and yes, many of those were improvisational bits, but he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of theatrical training and thousands of hours of real-world experience to hone these skills into a sharp, sharp focus. Plus, he also had the advantage of direction and editing in post to tighten up the bits or completely remove the bits that didn't work. A luxury that very few of us as magicians have. If you think that Robin Williams did all those shows just off the cuff, completely made up and spontaneous, I have a bridge you might be interested in buying. And now, on to those who think that performing with a script makes you sound stilted and artificial. All I have to say about that is get thee to a mummery. Yeah, that one didn't work. Let me, just a second. Yeah, so mummery, it's a theater joke. Mummers were historic players that can trace their roots back to the Middle Ages, but are best exemplified by the commedia dell'arte players of the 18th century, and the mummery was an allusion to Shakespeare, and you don't have to explain it, it's not funny. This whole thing was just a lead into that. If magic is going to be seen as an art, it is a performance art, and we call performing arts theater. It is my equivalent of the grumpy old man who sits on the porch and yells at the kids. But seriously, the other disciplines such as dance, music, and drama, they all work off of scripts. Even football has a playbook. So there's no reason why we shouldn't have scripts as well. I mean, it's virtually inconceivable to me that there are those who will work for untold hours on complex and often completely pointless manipulation and then spend zero time working on the script. However, I can kind of understand that because I'm the type of guy that spends countless hours working on the presentation and no time on the technical aspect. But seriously, if you think that having a script makes you sound canned and unnatural, no one to blame but yourself. And now for those who think they don't need us, sorry, I won't do that. And now for those who, really? It's not going to advance? Did we put fresh battery? Come on. Next slide, please. You know, you work for days rehearsing these things, and it just goes out the window when the technology fails. Sorry, guys. So if you think If you think a script makes you sound unnatural, get thee to a mummery. And now for those who don't think they need a script, everyone needs a script. As Eugene Berger says, if you don't have a script, how do you know where you're going? To which I like to add, how do you know when you've arrived? Because the end of a trip may not be the end of a routine, nor the start of a trip its beginning. And you won't know this until you actually plot it out and script the whole thing out and know exactly where you're going. This is something you have to do yourself because there is no GPS for your act. And without a script, you could find yourself wandering through your routine as aimlessly as Billy in a family circus cartoon. And there's no reason not to script. It's really easy. You just start with a basic premise. You cut the rope. You restore the rope. You add an introduction. This is a rope. Punch the ending. Ta-da! Add in some bits of business. Throw in some ancillary extras, and then string it together with some plot points, and then some extemporaneous dialogue. And before you know it, you have a clear and concise, easy to follow. Well, maybe you should do as I say, don't do as I do. After all, I am a trained professional. But really, this isn't as complicated as it looks. When it's all refined, it boils down to about 6 pages. So, you're still unconvinced. You think that by having a script, you're killing your act by setting it in stone and forever fixing it where it'll become dated and unnatural, and nothing could be further from the truth, because I have been doing my sword through neck routine for over 30 years. It's incredibly structured, meticulously scripted, but it's always changing. New bits are added, old bits taken out. It's refined, polished. Because I've done it for so long, I now have ancillary extra bits that I can call on. I have a line for everything, but it's still incredibly scripted. And by doing so, it allows me to achieve a level of naturalness because I don't have to think about what's coming up next. So it looks as fresh and spontaneous today as the first time I ever did it. Well, actually, the first time I ever did it well. You don't want everybody to see it, but the first time I ever did it. And because I know where I'm starting from, I know where I'm going, and I know every place I have to go between these 2 points, I can jump off script with ease. I can take alternative routes and loop arounds. It gives me a great deal of latitude because I know every word and everything I have to do by rote. It's just second nature. I don't have to concentrate on the words because they're just forever in the back of my head. This is one of the reasons why I think a lot of people that don't have scripts hate doing children's parties. Children are horribly unsocialized. They're like working for drunks. They think nothing of yelling out questions in the middle of the act. So here you are, you're trying to get through your routine, and you're doing well, and then little Sally jumps up and says, I have a cat. Which I say, I used to have a cat. And maybe I'll have a cat again someday, but nonetheless, she goes away, and you're lost. And so you have to start again, and then she jumps up and asks the exact same stupid question, or another one, and so you answer the question, but now you're lost, and so you've got to start again, and then she stops again, and you just keep doing this over and over and over again, hoping to just get to the restoration part until you feel like you're trapped in Zeno's paradox. All right, Larry got that. Bob, probably you think Zeno's paradox is a classic where you can never get to your destination because you're always halfway. All right, that's coming. Nonetheless, if you don't have your script down, you don't have your moves down, you spend way too much time thinking about those and very little time on the presentation. However, if your script and moves are down pat, you spend far less energy on them and can devote more to the presentation, thus making your act look 100 times better and much more professional. Because what do you want to see? Something that looks like this? Typewriter. I have a typewriter that I use to, I wrote my script with the typewriter, and I also used it to write my lecture notes in the addendum, which are for sale in the back of the room there. And they have all of my, well, not all of those, some of those routines aren't in there, but there's a lot of routines in there. Oh, including this one. This is a very good routine. Yeah, that's just horrible. You want a routine that looks like this. Now, many people assume that when I say you need to write a script out, you need to actually sit down at a typewriter and pound it out. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, my sword through neck trick, like I've said, been doing for 30 years, the script has never been transcribed, at least by me. It's all set in memory, written in memory, and until I wrote my lecture notes and the addendum, which are for sale in the back of the room, most of my routines had never been written down. Virtually all of them were done through rehearsal and working out the script through actions and just repeating it over and over again. The only one that I really had to sit down and write was the Schrodinger's models because of the technical aspect and getting all that set to memory. So you don't actually have to sit down and write a script. Well, yes, Sally? Where do I learn scripts? Well, I recite them while taking long walks in the woods. I recite them while running errands or driving to gigs. I'll even recite them while doing really crappy Photoshop working. Whenever I'm working on a thing like this one, I will repeat it over and over again and getting the verbiage down so it sounds natural in the way I like to say it, which is why I get really weird looks on the bus. And no one will sit next to me on a plane. So, in conclusion, I hope, oh, jeez, a bullet point, really? That's just sad. Well, let's make it look like a bullet. There we go. All right. I hope you have found this slideshow useful, insightful, beneficial, amusing, no, wait for it, entertaining, and I hope that after seeing this, you never come up to me and ask, do you have that whole thing memorized? Thank you.